Hey, how's it going? My name is King Tells Your Jobs, and welcome into Black Ops 6. I successfully made it to New Zealand safe and sound. We're loaded into a private match, and the goal of this video is to get you all set up with the best possible settings so you can dominate right out of the gate. Now, as you can probably tell by the length of this video, there are a ton of important and new settings to go over that even if you are able to successfully import your current MW3 or Warzone 3.0 settings, you're still going to want to watch this video through to make sure everything is set up correctly. Now, you might be wondering why on a settings video my game currently looks as bad as it does. My movement is clunky, my aim is slow. Well, that's because I'm playing on Xbox Game Pass here instead of through my usual Battle.net version. So from the start here, we're on a blank slate. But here's a sneak peek of what your game is going to look like after we're done tinkering with all the settings. So if your game looks like mine does here, or you're just curious to know about what has changed setting-wise for Black Ops 6 from the previous title, you're definitely in the right place. Also, if this setting guide helps you in any way, likes, comments, and subscriptions are much appreciated. But all right, that's enough yapping. Let's get into the settings guide. First things first, we're gonna go into controller settings. So the first thing that I like to do is that I'm going to change my B and A binds. That's just a personal preference. You guys don't have to do this. And that's it there for custom settings. If you do need to adjust your stick layout preset, go ahead and do that. So now what we want to do is adjust our horizontal and vertical stick sensitivities. I always recommend something in the range between 5 and 10. That's kind of like my personal sweet spot in terms of what I recommend to everyone. That's the standard for Warzone. That was my standard for Modern Warfare 3. Nothing's changing here for Black Ops 6. Next up, we have our simplified controls preset. Like it says here, this is ideal for players who are new to the FPS genre and want to learn gradually. The controls are less sensitive and some game mechanics require less effort to use. Now, since we're going for the most optimal competitive settings, we are going to keep this off. We're also going to keep the low motor strain preset off. However, if this is something that you do need to use, definitely go ahead and throw this on. Bumper ping, I've tried this before in Modern Warfare 3 and it just messed up my muscle memory too much. I didn't like it and I'm not gonna be using it in Black Ops 6 multiplayer. Okay, controller vibration. I personally play with this one off. I know a lot of people say, oh, it can mess up your aim. It doesn't matter. If you want it on, leave it on. I personally like it off. Dead zone inputs. If you guys don't know what a dead zone is, basically a dead zone affects how sensitive your joysticks are, okay? Now, what my general advice is if you have a brand new out-of-the-box controller, right? You generally want to move down your dead zone as low as you possibly can. If you have a really old controller, you might need to move that up a little bit to avoid getting stick drift, okay? So my left stick minimum, we're gonna throw that bad boy all the way down because this is your movement stick, right? It's okay if you're accidentally moving around. And then my left stick max, I'm gonna drop that down all the way to 75. And the reason being, when I want my character model to move, I want to move, right? I don't want to have any kind of delay at all when it comes to getting that maximum input speed on my left stick, okay? So we're going to drop that down all the way there. And now the right stick min, this is where you guys are going to need to play around with it a little bit on your own side of things, okay? Typically, I play around like 2 or 3 for the right stick minimum. It just kind of depends on your own personal controller and if you like stick drift or not. I, in general, like just a tiny little bit of stick drift, and that's it. I don't want anything crazy. I don't want my cursor moving all around the screen. Nothing like that. That's nothing good. We don't want that. So, and then you want to leave this at 99. Okay, here on the right. Now, here on the left, this you can put all the way down, basically as low as you want. These are your triggers. You're really not going to ever accidentally bump those, so you don't have to worry about having those like too low. And then if we test it, you can see here on the right, it looks like I have like a little bit of stick drift. You can see how it's off center. So maybe, I could put that up to 3 or maybe even 5. But you see how it's resetting versus before it wasn't if I'm not shaking my controller. So I think, 3 to 4 for me is personal. Like 3 is probably good for me. And chances are I also probably need to go get a new controller. Dead zone inputs, we're done. All right, so next up in our settings is going to be our aiming tab. And there's a lot of really important things on this one, okay? So first up, we have our sensitivity multiplier. I don't recommend you guys use this. I think the sensitivity multiplier is just best left alone. Look inversion, you don't want to touch that either. Leave that on standard. But most important on this page is going to be your aiming advanced settings, okay? So look inversion, we leave that alone. ADS sensitivity transition timing only applies if you're using a sensitivity multiplier, which we're not in this case. So what we're gonna go down to is gonna be our aim response curve type. Now, the biggest difference between this game and Modern Warfare 3 is the lack of aim assist types. Aim assist types are no more, so you're not gonna have your Black Ops, you're not gonna have your precision, etc. That doesn't exist anymore. All we have here are our aim response curve types. Now, in the beta, it felt to me like linear was the best play. So for the last couple of weeks, I switched over to linear, both for Warzone and MW3 multiplayer. However, they've made some changes to aim assist and how things work, like right before launch, and I've dialed things in a little bit. I've played a couple of games with each type of response curve type, and I think that dynamic still feels the best for me, which is good news because that's probably what most of you were playing on in MW3. Now, you're gonna wanna leave this aim response curve slope scale at 1. You're not going to want to touch that. But the other important thing that I think is really useful and really helps me with my aim is my custom sensitivity per zoom. And now I've dialed it in on low zoom and 2 to 3x. Haven't used any sniper optics yet, but generally you want to move these up really high. You don't want your 6 to 7 or 8 to 9 or high zooms too low. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to track how fast players are moving. But for the most part, in multiplayer, you're going to be sticking to these low zoom or 2 to 3x zoom optics. Once you get onto, leveling snipers or trying to do some sniper camo challenges, then you can come in and play around with these if you opt to do so. Now, how that works with my ADS sensitivity, my horizontal and vertical, is that I have mine set on 8 for horizontal and vertical for 7. So when you come in and apply this custom sensitivity per zoom, I have 0.7, ADS speed compared to that 8. Right? So it's more like I'm aiming closer to around like 6 horizontal, like 5-ish for vertical. So that's what I have found to be most comfortable so far when it comes to my ADS sensitivities, both horizontal, vertical, and custom sensitivities per zoom. Now we are going to get into the movement settings, all right? So we'll have you guys flying around here on the map in no time at all. So first up, most importantly, you guys, by default, this is going to be off, okay? Sprint assist is off, and you absolutely want this on tactical sprint assist, okay? This is your automatic tactical sprint from MW3 or Warzone 3.0 that we all know and love, okay? The other thing you absolutely want to go and check and make sure is at 0 is the sprint assist delay, right? If you have this up all the way, look at what happens, okay? So, right, look at this. See how long it took me for me to start actually tact sprinting? That's terrible. None of us want that. Turn that all the way down to 0, okay? All right, so moving on. Crouch assist. Basically, it's going to automatically crouch for you when you come up to a gap that you can crouch through. You just want to make sure that your crouch assist is off. You don't want to have the game decide when you want to slide or when not to. It's just going to throw off your aim, throw off your gameplay. You don't want that, okay? Next up, this is a new setting that they added in the day before patch notes, okay? Corner slicing in the beta was something you had to have on. And for those of you who might not know what corner slicing is, let's just quickly go to a doorway here. I'm going to aim, and as I come around the corner, you see how I lean, and then I go back. That's what corner slicing is. Now, in theory, it's kind of a nice mechanic. I think it's a cool little addition. It's kind of in the world of tack stance, right? It's kind of like one of those nice to have changes. It's cool that it's there, but is it super useful, and is it a setting that we want to have on, guys? I don't think so. And the reason why is that in the beta, sometimes when you go, you're playing a corner, right? It kind of throws off your aim. It changes your aim for you, which you don't want. Now, if you're playing super tactically, you're a big S&D player, you like to play slow, you're not going to be really spamming Omni movement and doing a bunch of, crazy movement techniques, diving around all over the place. You might want to leave this on and just see how you like it. It didn't throw off my aim all of the time in the beta, but it was enough to have me lose a couple of gunfights to the point where I didn't really like it. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to recommend that you guys turn that off as well. Okay, next up, we have our movement behaviors. And guys, a lot of you, I imagine, coming over from MW3 or Warzone, were playing on tap to slide or slide only. The thing about Black Ops 6 and Omni movement is every single one of you are gonna wanna learn to use hybrid, okay? And the reason why, if I have slide only, of course, it's gonna give you that nice quick slide, but I can't dive at all with this, right? I can only jump. And you wanna be able to take full advantage of Omni movement in Black Ops 6. So the second best one would be tap to slide, hold to dive. The issue is that there's a delay when you're trying to dive. And we don't want that. We want the ability to do any kind of movement we want to instantly, all right? So what we're gonna do here is go into hybrid. And basically, guys, what you have to do if you've never used hybrid before, you have to click your stick in and then hit your dive button, right, in order to dive. So I'm gonna click dive. But it's just much quicker if you guys learn how to use hybrid, okay? But honestly, this tap to slide setting with the short slide dive activation delay isn't too bad. So if you guys can't get used to the hybrid, go ahead and throw this on and make sure that delay is on short, okay? Now we're gonna get into some other really important stuff, okay? So automatic airborne mantle, which is basically a setting which lets you choose the behavior of the mantle action when the operator does not touch the ground, okay? Now, I like this off. This setting only messes me up, throws me off, and it's not something that I find to be ever very useful, and it just messes me up more than it helps me. And the other thing that this plays into is your grounded mantle setting, right? Because when your automatic airborne mantle is on, you can't turn this off. And what this grounded mantle setting affects, right, is when I'm like moving left into this half wall here and I jump up, it's gonna mantle me. So, right, so imagine you're in a gunfight here and you mantle during your gunfight. You don't want that, guys. So when you go into your controller settings, your movement advanced settings, and you turn off grounded mantle, you see how I'm not able to do that anymore? I'm pressing this jump button and it's just jumping. So you'll never have to deal with a situation ever again where you're going to mantle accidentally when you didn't want to with these two settings combined, okay? So you guys, I highly recommend that you have both of those off. Next up, we have our Sprint Restore, and this is a brand new setting in Black Ops 6. But Sprint Restore allows you to resume sprinting after various actions without being required to press the left stick again. This is an incredibly important setting. This allows you to take full advantage of Omni movement, right? Be diving, sliding, backwards, forwards, sprinting backwards, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so you guys want to make sure you have Sprint Restore on. Slide, maintain, sprint. This is coming over from MW3. We want to keep this on. You don't want to slow down at all after your sprint. You want to take full advantage of that Omni movement. Like I've said, that's what we're here to do today in these controller settings. So here we go. Parachute automatic behavior doesn't really matter for multiplayer, but I always like to be able to choose when my parachute comes out. It really helps in Warzone. Mantle cancels reload. Okay, so it took me a little while to figure out what this actually did. I should have just read the description of this, but basically this only applies when you have mantle assist on, okay? So if we go over to if we have mantle assist on here, which we don't want, then this comes into play. But I think you can just have this off and it's totally fine. So tactical sprint behavior, you want to have this on toggle. Auto move forward is off. Grounded mantle, like I was saying earlier, you want that off. Single tap sprint is the easiest way to like make sure that you're up and tactical sprinting as fast as you possibly can, okay? If you're trying to snake, this is where single tap comes into play, right? Or, you know, you're laying down and you want to get up and run as fast as you possibly can, get off the ground and get moving quickly. That's where single tap comes into play. You don't want to have to double tap. You don't want to automatically start running instead of tactical sprinting. That's why you want that setting on single tap sprint there. Plunging underwater, I like to have it on free. There are a couple maps in Black Ops 6 that do have water on them, but basically free allows you to like get in and out of the water easier. Okay, so that's why I like to have it on, and it's much better for Warzone. Now, this is a really interesting new setting that is brand new in Black Ops 6. And if you guys did not play the beta, this is going to be something that's brand new to you guys, okay? Which is the sprinting door bash setting. Sprinting through a closed door opens it with a bash. Bashing a door opens it more quickly and loudly than using X, right? So like if I come up to a door, so first of all, it's hold, which I don't like. We'll change that here in a second. But you can do that. But with sprinting door bash on, you bust through them. But the main and biggest quality of life change, and I love Treyarch for this, is when it comes to glass. Like here in Warzone, you guys know how often you would get stuck trying to jump through a window, right? Now here in Black Ops 6, that is never going to be an issue ever again, okay? You can easily, anytime you want to, hop through windows, get through doors. You're never going to get stuck at a window ever again. So you guys want to make sure that you have that sprinting door bash on. That is one of the best new settings that they've added to Black Ops 6. Advanced movement settings are done. Vehicle advanced settings, who cares? I'm not going to go into those. I might make something for that for Warzone, but we're not worried about that right now. Okay, so aim down sight behavior, you want to make sure that's hold. Weapon mount activation, I like to have this set to ADS plus melee. That's my preference. It makes it really easy for me to kind of like get in and out of mounting, you know, when I want to, when I don't want to in Warzone. All right, so the third item on the list for controller combat behaviors is going to be your dedicated melee weapon activation button. There are only two choices for this. You can either cycle between all of your weapons, or you can hold melee. Now, in my personal opinion, holding melee is definitely the better option just because it takes a little bit longer to cycle. And if you accidentally swap to that knife, it's gonna take you a little bit longer to get that gun out. But one thing that's really important to note about this dedicated melee weapon slot, which you're gonna have on every class in multiplayer, and hopefully they add it into Warzone, is that when you have this out, you have unlimited tactical sprint, okay? Which is really cool. I love this addition. Very nice that whenever you're working on your knife challenges, right, you don't have to waste a slot on a knife anymore. Definitely take advantage of this slot and make sure you have it set to holding down melee to get that knife out. Armor plate behavior, apply all. Now we're getting into some Warzone stuff. C4 detonation. This one's personal preference. If you like to set up a trap and wait for your enemies to run through it, you could do that all at once. I think one by one is better. For equipment behavior, hold is the default that we're all used to from every Call of Duty previously. Manual fire behavior. This is going to be your automatic single fire mode, okay? So like if I have my pistol out, okay, well this is a burst pistol. Well, actually I could just turn this on single fire. That was silly. Let's change it to semi-auto. So with this manual fire behavior setting here, with press, it only shoots once. But if you have it on hold, right, I'm not hitting the trigger multiple times. I'm just holding it down right now. It shoots. But you see how slow it's shooting right now? Versus if you do press, I'm going to be able to tap fire much quicker, okay? So in my opinion, you should just have this on press. So manual fire behavior, we want that on press. Combat setting advanced, change D-pad up behavior. I like this on ping. Change zoom activation. You're gonna wanna keep this on what it is, which is sprint tactical, sprint focus. So weapon mount exit basically lets you choose if you want movement to disable your weapon mounting. Now, this one doesn't really matter to me too much. I'm probably going to leave it on instant just in case. Like if in the middle of a gunfight, I forget how to stop weapon mounting, I'm not going to really use this a ton in multiplayer unless there are specific challenges for it. But if you guys want this, I'd leave it on instant or just turn it off in general if you're sometimes getting out of weapon mounting when you don't want to be. Okay, so now interact reload behavior. If you guys are multiplayer only, you're going to probably want prioritize reload, which when you're coming up to doors and stuff and you can't like reload your gun, then it's going to prioritize, you know, interacting with the door. But if you can reload, right, it's going to prioritize your reload there. So that's what I'd recommend you guys use if you only play multiplayer. However, for me, since I'm a big Warzone guy, I'm going to have prioritize interact on, which means that I need to always hold X on my controller to reload. Next up, we already covered sprint cancels reload, ADS stick swap, you want that off. Depleted ammo weapon switch, I like to have this off personally. Next up on the list, we have this body shield finishing move behavior, okay? We have a couple of options here, right? And if you guys don't know what body shield is, basically you can hold someone hostage and walk them around the map, which is a pretty fun mechanic. I think we should definitely be using that whenever we want to. So you might want to prioritize body shield or you might want to prioritize finishing move. If you're trying to really just sweat, you don't care about prioritize body shield, you could just turn on finishing move only, or you could turn on prioritize finishing move, and then, you know, if you have the chance to, you can do that body shield. But I'm gonna prioritize body shield at least for the first couple of weeks, just so I can play around with that. But I'll probably end up either turning that off or prioritizing the finishing move eventually once I'm really trying to start to sweat. Okay, so for scoreboard, maps, stats, behavior, having this on toggle is the default. Having it on hold is just kind of annoying. I'm so used to it being on toggle that it's going to be too tough for me to like change my muscle memory on that. Inventory control. This is a Warzone setting. You're going to want that to be on directional buttons. It's much faster than your left stick. Ping wheel delay. I like this off. I don't use the ping wheel for anything other than live pings and danger pings. That's it. So double tap danger ping delay. You want this on short. Wheel behavior. Let's do hold. Hold is fine. That's totally nothing to worry about there. And all right, so that is all of our controller aiming, movement, and combat settings. Now let's get into some of the other stuff, okay? So graphics first up, you guys, I'm on PC. So that means for you console folks out there that are watching this video, I'm gonna have some additional stuff that you don't need. However, there are gonna be a lot of similarities, and there are gonna be some really important settings here that you're gonna want to make sure that you change on your end of things, okay? So for my PC kids out there that are playing with controllers, first up, you're going to want full screen exclusive. That really helps your game prioritize the game, and it helps get you better frames. Display monitor, adapter, refresh rate, display resolution. This all kind of depends on the type of monitor that you have, the type of computer that you have, what your computer can support, what's going to give you the best frames, that kind of thing. Brightness, I typically like to crank this up a little bit, nothing too crazy, but it's not good to have your game be really dark, okay? Eco mode preset, I'm going to have that on custom. VSync, you want to have off. This adds input delay onto your game, which when we're trying to be competitive in a first person shooter, you don't want this on. If you want this on the menus to kind of, make the menus smoother, that's fine. I just like to leave it off in general. Unlimited is generally the best frame setting. I've noticed that in games when I have this capped, it does actually hurt my frames. So I typically like to leave this on unlimited. Reduce menu render resolution. This is fine on optimal. I don't really care about this too much. It doesn't really affect anything. Pause game rendering. Stop rendering the 3D scene behind the pause menu to display a black background. If your computer is a toaster or you're playing on like an old console and this is an option that you have, you might want to turn this off. I don't have any issues with this. Reduce quality when inactive. This just basically lets your computer cool down when you're not playing the game or not using anything. Focus mode, I only play on one monitor. It's 27 inches. I keep this at 0. HDR, you guys are going to want to have that off too, okay? So we're going to apply those settings and then we're going to go to quality. Extreme, this is probably a little much. Let's see how warm my computer's doing. Granted, this is multiplayer. I'm just going to go to ultra. Your render resolution. So the important thing is that you are matching your monitor's resolution. This is the important thing. But if you're getting a lot of lags or a lot of stutters, this is the number one thing that I've noticed dropping can help a lot with, right? So right now, say if I was having issues with 2560 by 1440, I could drop it down all the way to 1920 by 1080 and play in 1080p. And that would probably alleviate a lot of my performance issues, okay? But right now in multiplayer, and I have no issues running this at 1440p. All right, dynamic resolution, okay? This is something that you guys are gonna wanna have this off. This is not really a helpful setting when it comes to getting the best frames and performance in your game. Now, this is a setting that's actually on console, Fidelity FX Cast, and so I recommend you console kids turn this on too. We could turn this off real quick, and I could show you guys kind of like the difference. So this is with Fidelity FX Cast off, right? You see how everything looks kind of like blurry? It just doesn't look good, right? So, but when you turn this back on, look at how much crisper everything looks, right? Fidelity FX Cast is just the best sharpening setting in the game. You guys are really gonna wanna make sure you have that turned on, okay? Even on console. Okay, moving on. Now we get into VRAM scale target. So I have an AMD GPU, and typically playing in the 70 to 80 range reduces stutters. I don't think I'm gonna have any issues in multiplayer, but when I get to Warzone, I might try dropping this down to 70 or like 75 if I'm getting some stutters or performance issues. However, keeping this around like 80, 85 for AMD GPUs, I think should be totally fine. Variable rate shading is basically like it says here, a technique that improves performance at low visual cost by controlling where additional quality is needed in an image. This is actually pretty useful and it works pretty well. I think you guys should leave this one on. Texture resolution. This is another one of those settings that's really going to affect your game's performance depending on the PC that you have. Now, if you're getting bad performance, you're getting low frames, right, on PC, this is something that you're gonna wanna crank down if you need to, okay? This, your render resolution and your VRAM scale target are, in my experience, kind of like the biggest things when it comes to improving the performance of your Call of Duty game, okay? So normal, I'm just gonna leave that on normal for now. That's totally fine. Texture filter anisotropic. Select the texture quality of surfaces when viewed at an angle. This is gonna be like your, I think it's like puddles and stuff. I'm gonna turn that down to low. Depth of field. This is one that's shared between console and PC. Okay, so you console kids, listen up. You want to have this one off. You don't want to have any adjustment to your depth of field or adding blur when you're zooming in or out. That we don't want. Detail quality, I'm just going to drop all these down. Bullet impacts we'll leave on. Persistent effects, turn those off. Shader quality, this is going to be another big one, and I'm probably going to leave that on medium. And on-demand texture streaming, so this is the new setting that they all changed a couple months ago. But if you guys don't have unlimited internet, regardless if you play on console or PC, you're going to want to come in and change this. Okay, you're going to want to make sure you turn on those daily download limits. Otherwise, you're not going to be happy when you get your internet bill, or your parents aren't going to be happy when they see the internet bill. Okay, I'm just going to leave it on the defaults for now because I do have unlimited Wi-Fi. Shadow quality, we can just leave that on normal. In the past, there have been bugs related to this where you've wanted to have this on ultra. So, you know, if you guys are encountering some performance issues, that might be one of the first things you want to change, just to see if that makes a difference for you. Screen space reflections, we'll turn those down to low. Occlusion low, screen space reflection there. And static reflection quality, I'm going to turn that down to low as well. Volumetric low, deferred physics low, weather grid volumes low, water quality, who cares? And we can turn that off. That'll save me some performance. View motion reduction preset. This is basically just to reduce the effects of motion sickness. I don't ever get motion sick when I'm gaming, so I'm going to leave this off. Next up, field of view, and this is of course extremely important. Now, I think by default it starts out at 80. However, for multiplayer, I would recommend somewhere in the range of like maybe 105 to 110. Now, I like to play on 120 personally, right? Just because I record YouTube videos, and I think 120 FOV looks better. But a lower FOV, like 105, 110 range, is going to help you guys perform a little bit better. So that's what I would recommend for you all, you know, unless you're like me and you're making videos yourself. ADS field of view. Okay, this is one of the biggest settings, whether you're on console or PC, right? And I'll show you right now why it's so important. Okay, so when I am aiming in on independent, look at what my zoom does. See how zoomed in I get? This is not what you want at all. Okay, you guys want to make sure that this is on affected. This is one of the most important and most commonly unused settings in the game that you absolutely need to make sure is unaffected, okay? Weapon field of view. This changes how big your weapon actually looks on your screen. So you guys want to set this to wide. It'll make your weapon smaller, and that allows you to see more on your screen besides your weapon, okay? Third person field of view, don't care. Vehicle field of view, don't care. World motion blur, you want to have that off. Weapon motion blur, you also want to have that off. First person camera movement, turn that on to least, and you can just do that for third person camera movement while we're in here. Inverted flashbang, I don't like this because it makes me think that my game crashed, but if you guys prefer using this or you're playing on a console and you don't really have to worry about game crashes too much, you can go ahead and turn this on if you don't like getting flashbanged. Now we get into the audio, okay? And there's going to be some interesting stuff in here. First up, master gain volume, turn this to whatever feels comfortable based on whatever settings you have. So for me right now, it feels like 25. Like 25 feels pretty good. Or around 25, doesn't really matter too much. Dialogue volume, I like to turn this all the way down, keep the effects volume, gameplay music volume, and cinematics. I keep the cinematics. I like the Black Ops 6 soundtrack. Now we get to our audio settings, the best settings that you can possibly use, you know, default in the game in order to hear footsteps. Now for me, this is gonna be my speakers since I am playing on PC, and I turned on enhanced headphone mode. I did a little bit of testing with this, and I think it really does help with directional audio cues, both gunshots and footsteps. Now, this enhanced headphone mode configuration, this is a mode that you would have to go and pay for, and I haven't tested this. I'm not sure if it's worth it, but I'm sure you guys could do some looking around online or on YouTube to see other people who have tested this out already and, you know, what they think about it. But from the basics of what I've heard, this works really well for some people, and others it doesn't really do much, or it makes things worse. So it's kind of hit or miss, and it really just depends on your head shape, and there's no way to really know until you actually pay to test it out. Now, the program that does this offers you a free 30 days. So if you guys want to give that a try, you know, it's 20 bucks and you have the potential to get your money back. I might try that at some point just to see how it works for me. But right now, I don't think you need this. You have the universal profile with this enhanced headphone mode, and I think this works pretty well. But then what's most important here on this list is going to be your audio mix. Now, I tried a couple different things, right? I tried all of these out, and the one that impressed me the most with how clear I could hear footsteps, I went into a private match on Skyline, tested it against bots, and I was just laying down, listening, trying to hear audio cues, and headphones was the best for me. Maybe this is because I have IEM earbuds that connect to an amp/DAC, and this is what sounded best to me. Now, since I am PC, something that people will commonly use is loudness equalization. Now with my amp DAC setup, I can't use the built-in Windows loudness EQ. So I have like a Realtek app which can enable loudness equalization. However, when I was testing it, weirdly enough, the footstep audio sounded more clear without the loudness EQ. That's what I experienced from like very quick testing. I'm not sure how this is going to work in Warzone. I'm going to definitely release a new video once Warzone comes out and I've had some more time to play with the game. But for now, I think this is going to get you guys in a really good spot in terms of audio. So I'd recommend giving this a go, seeing what you think, maybe hopping into a little bit of private matches just to test it around and see what you think is the best in terms of footstep audio. Now, if you disagree with what I have here, let me know what you guys are using and what you think allows you to hear the footsteps the best, okay, down below in the comments, because I'm really interested in learning what the best audio mix settings are, you know, from your guys' point of view, or, you know, if you're playing on console or using over-ear headphones or like that kind of thing. But with what I have, I think this is going to be a really good starting point, though, for you guys for audio. Mono audio, you're going to want off. Mute game when minimized, who cares? Mute licensed music, since I make YouTube videos, I'm going to turn that on, but you know, you guys aren't going to need that. Asymmetrical hearing compensation. So for those of you who might only have one ear or some hearing damage in one of your ears, you can actually turn this on and play around with this and hopefully get more beneficial audio cues in game, which I think is a really awesome setting. Configure frequency intensity. And so this is, I think, part of that asymmetrical hearing compensation setting. Reduce tinnitus sound, so like concussion and flash grenades, I always turn that on. And hit marker preset, I like none, because in game when I'm sweating, I only want to hear stuff that I need to hear, which is footsteps, gunshots, that kind of thing. I don't really need to hear hit markers. I have that visual right in the middle of my screen that I'm hitting a hit marker. So, you know, I like to have that off personally. Voice chat, of course, these are all personal preference, whether you want those on or off. You guys will need to play around with the microphone levels depending on what kind of mics you have. You can test it here. You just want to make sure that it's on the correct input. Okay, now interface. This is where we also get into some really interesting stuff. Okay, visual support preset, you know, like we've been kind of doing so far, presets we don't really want to use. Menu prompts, automatic, who cares? I think I turn those off. Gameplay tips, I turn off. Tutorials, I turn off. Skip introduction movie, I turn on. Skip kill cam is off. Tool tips, I also turn that off as well. Telemetry, this will let you show like the frames you're getting, your server latency, your packet loss, and that's basically all I use. I find that the rest of these aren't very accurate or never really work, so I always keep those off. Connection meter, you know, I think I leave this off too in general. For the network in-game alert icons, I like to have this on. Same thing for hardware in-game alert icons. For readability tab, subtitles, I don't care. I like to have these off. Maybe I'll turn those on for the campaign or zombies, but that's it. Text chat, you know, who cares about that? Now we get into the color customization, and there is a pretty nice filter that you can do, and it's this one here. So there's a little before, and we'll do a little after. And I'm gonna go ahead and update a couple of color settings, okay, to make things a little bit easier for me to see. Most important thing here is that you're picking a color that's really easy for you to see, okay? So you could do like a bright purple, since that won't really overlap with any other colors in the game, whereas red sometimes might. This is typically what I like to have it on. So I'm just gonna leave it on purple for now. And you can also set your squad member colors. You can default these, which I think is gonna be really interesting for Warzone, but for multiplayer, it doesn't really matter that much. So I'm gonna leave that alone for now. And now we get into gameplay HUD, where, okay, you guys can see here what's changing as we scroll through stuff. So redacted, so that turns everything off. Magnified, I don't mind too much, just because it makes the minimap a lot bigger, which is kind of cool. Central command is also an interesting one that I might play around with, but what I was using during the beta is mission interface. So after playing around with the HUD presets a little bit, I think I just like mission interface the most. Mission interface defaults your minimap to that square size, and you can go ahead and change the visuals of it if you would like to. I like putting the compass type on the minimap. I don't ever use the compass, so I kind of want that off the screen. Minimap rotation, you want to make sure that's on. Radar changes the minimap to look like this. I don't like this. I much prefer this to be off. The scale, if you want to make this bigger, you can make it bigger. I might end up doing that just because having your minimap be bigger and making the icons easier to see, making the icons further spread out when they are separate from, or like when there's a lot of people in one area would be nice. Information, if you don't care about objectives, you can turn that information off too, which is, I think, really cool. You know, once you get familiar with where hardpoints and flags are, you can turn that off and turn it on to players only. So you never have to worry about aiming into and like having a flag overlap with a player and like messing up what you can see. Icon scale, it's icons on the minimap, which you want to make sure that those are big as possible to make it really easy to see those enemy pings. Minimap opacity, so you could turn this all the way down or just turn it low to make those enemy dots really stick out. So I think I'm going to put this at like a 50 to start with, and we'll see how that plays. But I think that's pretty good. Maybe like a little 60. We'll give that a try to start with. Weapon information, okay? So you can change this, see in the bottom right corner there, how it gets less visible. I like to be able to see that. Same thing with equipment information. Elimination ID, so that's going to be like, I think, the banner that pops up when you take someone out. Medals and notifications. I'm probably going to end up cranking these down just because I think medals get really annoying, overwhelming, especially when you're like leveling up in game, leveling up the battle pass. There's so much kind of just junk on your screen. I'm probably going to end up turning those off. Player and streak toast. I have no idea what that is, but I'm just going to leave that on for now. I'm going to leave all these on for now and probably play around with them. But if you notice that when you're in game doing something and it's kind of like getting in the way of what you can see and maybe leading to you dying, then you can go ahead and just drop this down all the way to 0. So huge shout out to Treyarch for these changes. This is awesome. I love this amount of customization when it comes to your HUD. Okay, next up, HUD Bounds. Now, this is something that I personally like to do, and that's change the bounds of the HUD. Now, if we were doing like that central command and you wanted your minimap down here, but you want it as big as possible, and it's kind of getting cut off there on the bottom, what you could do is come into your HUD bounds and drag this up so your minimap stops getting cut off, okay? So I like to have this pushed over a little bit and a little bit further down, okay? So as you guys can see here now, my minimap's gonna be further in towards the middle of my screen, which makes it easier for me to see. So I'm actually gonna come in and adjust that even further and drag it like there, okay? That's personally what I like, kind of like something like this, okay? It's less distance that my eyes have to go to see that minimap, okay? But if you guys hate that, of course, you don't have to use that. That's just a personal preference. All this stuff is fine. Crosshair. Okay, now, this is a brand new setting. This was not in the beta, and this is so nice to have. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in, and if you wanna run this like me, right? Like if you like having your crosshairs, you know, your bloom indicator on, that's totally fine. You can go ahead and do that. But if you're like me and you just want that big center dot on your screen, you can go ahead and turn on that center dot, change it to largest, keep this opacity at 100, and you can come in and change your center dot. Oh, this is so helpful. This is gonna help you guys so much with your centering. You're gonna wanna come in and make sure that this is a color that you can always see, regardless of, you know, if you're colorblind, you know, across the various maps. I'm not going to keep this on green since there's a lot of grass, a lot of trees, you know. So what would be a good color? Like probably a bright yellow, maybe. I'm also on kind of a dark map too, so I can already tell this is helping me so much with my centering, and chances are our brains are probably going to get used to the color of this center dot. But then you could just go in and change the color, and it's going to give you that refresher to keep your centering in mind and always keep your gun up as you're like running around the map. So I'm going to keep that on yellow for now, or, you know, like a bright blue actually could be nice. Hit marker visuals you want on. Damage-based hit markers you also want on. That'll let you know if you're getting a headshot or not. And you guys, that's gonna do it for this settings video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. You learned a lot about like what all these new Black Ops 6 settings are, what they do, how they work, and how it makes your gameplay feel better, more fluid, more intuitive, and you guys are ready to hop in and dominate in Black Ops 6. So good luck with your games. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.